to Leadership Rediscovered. I'm your host, Laura Siebold, and today I am very honored to be joined by Jean Michel Habineza. Jean Michel has been in the work of genocide prevention and youth empowerment for the past decade. He was one of the founders of Peace and Love Proclaimers, Youth for a Change, an organization aimed at creating positive change in Rwanda. PLP, as it's commonly referred to as, was the creator of A Walk to Remember, not the movie, but a commemorative walk, more importantly, a commemorative walk that brings together young people from all over the world to end mass atrocities. The walk has taken place in 25 countries around the world and attended by dignitaries such as President Kagame and First Lady, William Hague, Foreign Secretary of the UK, Samantha Powers, which is the U.S. Ambassador to the UN, among others. Jean Michel Habineza also founded an organization called iDebate Rwanda. iDebate Rwanda is a program that works with secondary students to teach them the art of public deliberation and working on their communication skills as well as their inner critical thinking skills. iDebate Rwanda currently works with 140 schools in Rwanda with a plan to work with 500 schools in the next 5 years. iDebate has worked with thousands of students who have performed excellently internationally and has won the 2017 African Schools Debate Competition and the 2018 Rollins Cup, an international prestigious debate competition contested between Rollins College and an international team. Past contestants for the trophy have included world-renowned Oxford and Cambridge universities, and Rwanda is the only African team to have contested and won it. Jean Michel was honored as the 2016 Public Advocate of the Year by the Cross-Examination Debate Association, the largest intercollegiate debate program in the USA. Jean Michel is also a communication coach, which I could use some of that, who enjoys equipping people to have a voice. He's a contributor for the book Debate as Global Pedagogy, Rwanda Rising, that talks about how communication can help us end atrocities in the 21st century. He holds a Bachelor's of Arts in International Studies from Towson University and an MA in Social Entrepreneurship and Change from Pepperdine University in Malibu. And you also get this distinction of traveling the longest distance to be on this podcast, although I know
definitely.
That's not why you're here.
Yes, no, definitely.
But thank you so much for being here. I am thrilled to meet you and talk to you.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I'm excited to see where the conversation is going to go.
Yeah, me too. So I have to give a shout out to Dr. Michael Davis, who recently was on the podcast and said, hey, you should talk to my friend. And I thought, well, how are we going to broker that? And then here you are. So I know you have a long history together, but you have quite a journey that you've been on.
Well, he's a very good friend of mine. And I always say whenever Mike asks, you can't say no. So when he says you do this, I'm like, well, there's a reason behind it. So I'm just going to do it.
That's wonderful. Well, I would love to introduce you more to individuals that may not know who you are and your story. So if you don't mind, just take us on your leadership journey. I know you established yourself as a leader at a pretty young age, and would just love to hear a little bit more about who you are and your story.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure if I can talk about my leadership journey without talking about where I come from.
Yes.
So I come from Rwanda in East Africa. And one of the things is I grew up in Rwanda, but I think at a younger age, when I was almost a teenager, moved to Nigeria for a few years. But I, came back to Rwanda. For many who know about Rwanda, they know about the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, where in a period of about 100 days, more than 1 million people were massacred. And early on, I was we're talking with Dr. Davis that, Rwanda is half the size of West Virginia. Mm-hmm. So we're a very small country. And in the space of 100 days, about 1/7 of the population was killed. Wow. And, not to give away my age, but when the genocide happened, I was about 6 years old. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty young. But one of the things that happens is then you get older and you start learning about your country, you start learning about all the issues that are affecting your country. And the issues that were very particular to my generation is, the generation that comes right after a conflict. It is that eternal, almost like you're torn between this desire for a better future, but then being held back by the past.
Yes.
Because think of it in this way. In our parents' generation, we might have victims and perpetrators because there were those that killed and those that were killed. But in our generation, many of us were actually young when it happened. So we can't say that we participated, but we're all victims of that history. So with that, there's that. It's almost like pluralization is both a cause and an effect of the conflict. So people are pluralized. And then also because of the conflict, then you also have pluralization.
Yes.
So for me, when I was about 19, with some friends of mine, were asked the question of, what do we do? How do we make sure that we are... we take seriously the idea of never again, that what happened in our parents' generation won't happen again. And then also the question that I feel like my life is trying to answer is, how do we live together? How do we build a society where we learn how to live together? So when we started, I normally say that I was 19 and I was probably the oldest. And we start this movement. It ended up, we had... thousands and thousands of teenagers and young people who were saying, well, how do we deal with that history in a newer way? So we started talking about reconciliation. We started talking about forgiveness. We started talking about, what would it take for us to live together? And around that time, a lot of the commemoration, which, was seen as something for the kids of the survivors or the survivors. So this thing of they're the only ones who were impacted by the genocide, therefore they're the only ones to remember. So this idea of a walk to remember was, what if we brought everybody? That genocide affected all of us differently, and then we're able to come together, and then now we participate. We make a sort of a statement as a generation that this will not happen again. And around that time, right after my high school days, then I got privileged to come to the United States at Towson University in Baltimore. And then there I was on a debate scholarship. And on the debate scholarship, one of the things, first of all, it was the first time to be in a place where debate was very competitive. I always found, I'm like, why are Americans so competitive? It's like, I'm like, what are you winning after this?
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, it was both, amazing to see, but I was also confused. I'm like, do we get, exactly. It's like, do we get money? What do we get after this? And it's like a trophy that probably costs $15. But, this idea of working hard on something. But it was the first time I was exposed to so much knowledge, so much. It was amazing. I mean, it definitely is an experience that shaped my life, because I found an email that I sent to my father the 15th of September. I had gotten to the U.S. Right before the Democratic National Congress, Obama, 2008.
Okay.
And then 1 month later, I write to my father and I said, oh my God, I had done a debate tournament. I lost all the rounds. And honestly, it was because I couldn't hear anything they were saying. They speak really fast. And I'm not, English is not my first language.
Right.
So it was hard. But I told him, I'm like, this is amazing. And I hope that my plan is, once I come back to Rwanda, I'm going to build something like this. But for me, what was powerful was this idea of getting people together who disagree intensively and who are going to really dig deep on some of these issues, and you learn so much. I mean, your ability to think and communicate. And then I also learned, and as I was getting, when you're young, you do things because you just think is the right thing to do. But then as you grow older, you start thinking through. It's like, but if there's an issue, what caused it? And I started doing a lot of research on what makes people commit violence over others. Why do you, if we all have this inner, I always say this inner moral code that tells us that you shouldn't do harm to your neighbor, then why is it that we do it? How do we justify it? Yeah. And I found that there were many things about our culture in Rwanda, and then also the the culture in Germany and in places where mass violence happened. One of it is blind obedience to authority. So the person in authority, whether it's the father in the home, the teacher in the classroom, or the leader, whatever they tell you to do, you do. Right. And then there's also this lack of critical thinking and this us and them, mentality where it's us versus them. Right. Whoever us is and whoever them is. Right. And then part of it is this monolithic societies where we think in one way, and it's, everything has to be done in a certain way and it has to move this way. And I find that monolithic societies tend to be very effective. We get things done. Yeah. But the problem with that, though, is like then if there's if combined with the lack of critical thinking, the lack of with blind obedience to authority, then it becomes easier. So I thought I think something like this could work in Rwanda. So I graduated 2012, and I literally say by the time I was done, I finished university on Wednesday. I graduated on Wednesday. Saturday I was in Kigali. I was like, I'm a man on a mission. I have to get this done. Yeah. And so we started off. I mean, honestly, if I knew how hard it would be, I would not have started. But you do what you got to do. So we started off. Now you got to think of it. Rwandans are, by nature, more quiet. They're not the kind who speak their mind. They're very paused. So telling them, hey, no, we have to learn how to disagree and have. It's like the young people, the very young ones. It's like, yeah, let's do it. Like, because
I don't like these rules anyway.
Exactly. I always say that. I love working with teenagers for the same reason that everyone else hates it. It's like they're rowdy. They think that they have an opinion about everything. They think they know it all. And I'm like, well, that's good, because then it becomes easier for you to work with them. Yeah. So we started off, built the team, trained everyone, really started going to schools and training. When I think of it right now, I'm like, I'm not sure how I was able to do. I was training about 8 to 10 schools by myself, training everyone, and then just build up, Yeah. But, I couldn't. I was also working as a teacher. I worked I also worked at the Genocide Museum in Kigali. And all of that for me was like, okay, this has to work. This has to work. And then slowly, you bury yourself to work. You build and you build and you build. And then now it's been 11 years. And we work with more than 5,000 kids. And we have built all of these programs that sometimes when I look back, I'm like, wow, we got to do this. And but, I think it was this year. We had a holiday program and we had a residential program. We had 900 kids who attended. And I tell people, I'm like, if you don't see how magical this is, that at least 400 Rwandan parents have given money for their kids to come and do debate, I think that's amazing. I'm like, and it gets you more excited. That's the problem. But it was like that's.
I don't think it's a problem at all.
No, but it's for me it's amazing. Yeah. I think we can do all these programs and it's fine and it's good. But for me it's that idea of, man, we are changing culture and you're building a new culture, and it's hard and it takes time, but it can be done. And I think for me, that's the exciting part. So I've moved. I've done that now for 11 years. We run a pretty small and large organization, and it's exciting where things are going. And again, whatever we can do, that's what we've been trying to do. So, that's a bit of my leadership journey and what I've been up to for.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I already have so many questions just based on that. But what was your original vision, or what were you hoping to accomplish when, as soon as you graduated, you had to get back and get started? At that moment, what were you envisioning of what you were hoping to achieve?
So I think there were two things for me. Mine was always this sense of gratitude that I've had I went to university for free for 4 years. And my coaches changed my life. They really taught me so much. And I thought, if we can do that for a few hundred kids, then that's going to be amazing. But I also thought, it's like, we're going to build some programs. And I never really thought, to be honest, I never really thought that we will ever go beyond 30 schools. I always thought it's going to be a small program, and it's nice, and we will build something along those lines. And mine was, just getting some kids to debate, but then, that's all I had in mind. I had in mind I'd do that for a few years, then it's going to be good enough, and then the vision just keeps growing, and you start, you stumble on things that it's like, oh my, I didn't think about it, but it looks, it's a good idea. But for me, I never thought, like in my wildest of dreams, and I tell you, and I'm a big dreamer, but in my wildest of dreams, I never thought we'll get to where we are.
That's amazing.
And for me, that's both humbling and so exciting too.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you're far enough along with it now that you probably, I would assume, have kids who are now maybe adults coming back and hopefully sharing stories of how this is impacting their life and how it's changed them.
And part of, for me, what's even better is that then you are getting the younger siblings of some of the people that you've started with. And that's when, I'm getting old, but, it's like, I'll give you one of the, in the camp that we had 900 kids, and we had about 132 volunteers. And I remember telling, the best gift that I've ever gotten is that all of those I have trained. All of those volunteers, those 132, I have trained.
Wow.
And now you sort of get to sit back, and it's weird because you enter the room and you see them doing, it's like, you sound like me. Exactly. And then you also are getting what the ones that we started with are maybe in their mid-20s now. And then you get to see that everyone is seeing them and seeing how amazing they are. And I'm like, I saw it when they were 15. And that for me is like, oh my God, right? It's like that for me is like, I could see it before. Now everyone is getting to see what I saw before. And I was so lucky that I was part of your journey to be able to get to where you are.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't think there's anything that is as humbling and as fulfilling as that.
Yeah. And I can tell you are humble, so this next question might be hard for you, but I'm curious if you're starting to see the cultural impact that you were hoping for, and if you could share maybe some successes that have come out of the program so far.
Yes, I think that, yes, we're starting to see it. One of the ways is that we, for a long time, we had to convince schools and tell them, this is important. Now we no longer have to. So we have gotten to a point where now it's about delivering and actually how can we make this better. So we're now actually getting to the real work. And then, but then also it's a lot of the kids. So one of, I was sharing a few days ago that to Mike Davis that one of the best thing that I heard from a person in Rwanda who works in the field of talent, finding talent, is like, in this country there is 3 sources of talent, and he listed 2 universities, and then he also talked about iDebate being the third one, and he said even those universities, the Rwandan ones, all have a source from iDebate, and then. I think also I always think of my job as I'm in the business of building people. That's my business. That's my business. And for me is the number of kids that we're seeing, moving around or coming, a lot of some of the people who are in, communication for companies, for big companies, they all pass through us. A lot of the kids who are, doing things that are innovative in a way, they've all passed through. One of the newest thing that I was doing was working with entrepreneurs, and it's so interesting because I introduced myself, and they're like, "Well, you don't remember me, but I was also part of the, iDebate a long time ago," and I was like, "Oh." And I'm like, I'm excited. So I would have a room of maybe 20, and 4 or 5 of them have all been through the program. and it's exciting to see. And it's like, oh my God, imagine what other things we could do, but.
Wow. What gave you the courage to get started with that? Because again, especially as you're describing how many people around the world, but in particular, maybe even your culture is maybe, I wouldn't say necessarily endorse going off and starting this new thing and doing something that was very different than what had been done. So I'd be curious what gave you the courage to even start that?
Well, one of it, I'm stubborn. I just like to prove a point. Honestly, I just love to prove
really
a point. Yeah. It's like, exactly. It's like, I just want, I want to prove a point. Yeah. It was like, last year we celebrated 10 years and I told my brother, I was right. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. I wanted to be right.
I can quit now. I just wanted to prove the point.
Exactly. I wanted to prove a point. I think that's one. But then also there's this sense of, I think it infuses your life with so much meaning because you're building something that has not been there.
Yes.
And then you are thinking of, even if we fail, for me, it's like, but at least we have proven that it can be done. Yeah. And then also it's like, providing one of my mantras as a leader, I always and I hope I usually say it to the team is like, let magic happen. Like this idea, and it comes from one of my mentors, and I'll just give this quick. I was tired, which is normal, and I said, I want to be out, and I'm tired, this and this, and then he told me a story. He's like, he loves football. And then he says, but I mean the real football, not the American football. I just like playing around.
I thought about asking, but I bet I know which football you're talking about.
and he was talking about, when there's a game, he's like, who are the loudest people? And he says it's the guys in the stands. They have a lot of opinion on what should be done. They have an opinion on what this person should have done, this and this and this. And then he says, but the people who are in the field, he's like, when they come in, when they're playing, what he says, there's a chance that somebody might break their leg. There's a chance that they might faint. There's a chance that something can happen to them. But it's like, why is it that they still play? He says it is because there's many chances that things will go wrong, but they only have the chance, and maybe magic could happen. So sometimes you play because magic can happen. And for me, it's like that idea of magic can happen. We can make something that was not possible. And that is, if there's a little bit of chance, then I think for me it's all worth it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But you did say, and I can imagine, because you've been doing this for, you said 11 years now, and you were talking about, if I knew it was going to be this hard, and I think a lot of times that's how it goes. And sometimes starting something is easier because you have the enthusiasm, the excitement, but I mean, sustaining it over that long, how do you continue to have the energy, the momentum, the drive to keep it going? Because that's a long time to keep something going. That is a lot of work. Yes.
And one of the things for me is you start learning about, there's the power of conviction. There's one. But then also for me, I think faith is important. Belief in God, belief that maybe something that God created me to do this. That helps. And then also on my phone, I have a folder called Reminder, and it is all the messages from former students who wrote to me and to tell me, hey, thank you, you've changed my life, you have done this in my life. And whenever I feel, which is very often, like I'm tired, why am I doing this? I always look at that. And then also the other thing too is, it's weird. I always give myself time. So I'm like, all right, after 3 months, I'm going to be out, right? It's like I kept on until, exactly. And then you start going, over time. But you're going to be wounded. Like that's what comes with leadership. You are going to be wounded. You're going to be, you feel like you're trapped because you have so much, you see a vision. It's the problem with that is like the vision eats you alive, but then you also feel like you don't have the resources, you don't have so you're in that constant state. And for a long time I used to say, well, I wish I was just like normal people who just accept things the way they are, and you just go with it. But
on.
then also it's like, no, I won't want that. It's like life can be boring. But I tell the kids that I work with and a mentor, it's like, the reality is life is boring 90% of the time, right? It's like even this work is hard. It's boring. It's just routine 90% of the time, but it's just that possibility that keeps it exciting. But it has to be a deep conviction. You have to believe that I'm in it and I'm not. It's like throw away the keys. I'm in to stay, and that's what's hard. And then showing up, and doing what needs to be done.
Yeah, and I think that's an important lesson because I've seen a lot of literature about and images of, someone digging in a mine and it's like they're almost there, but they want to give up. And it's like, if only you could see that you're almost there. But I do think it's easier for people to quit, to give up, to move towards what's comfortable or safe, as opposed to, how much longer am I going to have to keep digging to get to where I'm trying to go? And I think that's a huge lesson to say, look what can happen if you do stick with it. And it's going to be hard. I heard you talk about pain on another podcast, and the fact that there are painful moments in life. It's not all, this is a beautiful story that you could make a movie out of, and someone should if they haven't. But at the same time, it's not a perfect sunshine and rainbow story either.
And it takes, I think it takes time. It takes time. And that's where, I always say I'm able to see a person who has been doing the work and a person who has not, who has been lying about doing, because they're humble. Life humbles you. Like you get to a point it's like, oof, I am tired.
The older that you get, the more you realize you don't know as much as you
exactly.
The less I know somehow. How does that work?
Exactly. No, it is. But it's also like, but then also you get the beauty of staying in something for so long is that then you get to look back and say, wow, and don't quit too soon. It's just, we overestimate what we can do, in 1 year, but I think it was somebody who said it's like we overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but underestimate what we can do in 10. And it's like, all right, go on. And one of my mentors used to tell me, you are not as brilliant as everyone else. You maybe don't have the same resources. But one thing, though, is I'm going to be here longer. And I'm going to, while you all, I'm going to be here longer. And I think it's coming in with that mindset. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard you say, and I'll try to quote you correctly, but you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, about there's a lot of leadership positions, but not a lot of leaders. And I heard you say something to that effect, and I was like, oh, yes. And I just love for you to maybe expand on your philosophy about leadership, your definition of leadership, and just, what's shaped you as a leader at this point.
I would say that what I was talking about there, if I remember well, it was that there are a lot of people in authority, in positions of leadership, but very few leaders. Because one of the things that we have equated someone, let's say, having the position of, the CEO, they're this, and we say, oh, they're a leader. No, they're in a position of leadership, but they might not be leaders. And for me, I would say, to be honest, the best experience or what taught me leadership more than anything is being a teacher. I was a teacher for 7th and 8th graders. And
that's a tough
exactly. It is.
I did
and
it for 3 days a week ago, and I'm still recovering. It
is. No, it was crazy because I just finished 4 years of very intensive debate, and I had all these great ideas about, what it takes, and I had read all the books. And I get in this classroom, and they could care less about what I had to say. And I'm like, you little devils. But, but they didn't care. And now the question was, how do I take these kids who don't care about whatever I think is important? How do I take and how do I take them to another level? How do I move them to a place where maybe I think we should go, right? And maybe and how do I bring them along? I can punish them to death. Sure. I can say, I'll fail you, I'll do this. But that's not going to take, because where I want them to be is hard, and it's going to require effort. And then for me, I started seeing where I did it for 2 years, and I was like, this is what leadership is. For me, it was leadership is this idea that you have a vision for what could be, and then you're taking people along, right? So any leadership that does not have a vision, that is beyond self, because it can't be that, oh, my leadership is I'm going to be the best and I'm going to use you to get to where I want to be.
Yes.
It's like, nah, that's not going to work. It's like you have to there has to be a vision that is so big that it removes our, preset self-interest and, and reluctancy for anything. So it has to be that you're taking people along a journey and you're taking them to a place that they have not been.
Yeah.
So it means that as a leader, you have to, you do both, right? So you're pulling your people, you're pushing them, and it's almost like they are thinking, this is the wall. They're seeing this wall and they're thinking, this is how far I can go. But your job as a leader is to tell them, actually, no, you actually can go beyond that.
Yeah.
And you're pushing them to say, well, actually, and good leadership, and which is what makes it hard, is at the end of the day, people feel like I did it. Like I am the one who did it. Right. And you're sort of like, yeah. Like, exactly. But, it's, you're not getting everyone to praise you and to say, oh, thou majesty or whatever. No, they are getting and says, I am able to do things that I never thought possible. And I think being a debate coach is one of the best experience in my life, because a lot of the students say, thank you for believing in me because you saw what I didn't see myself. And I think for me, that's what leadership is that you are given the ability to take people to a place that they haven't been to. And when they get there, they thank themselves because they also had a big part in that. So it's...
and they were willing to commit to it, right? Because I think that's a hard part of leadership too, is just because you see that in somebody else and maybe they don't recognize it in themselves doesn't mean they're willing to go along for the ride. It's like, well, that's great that you think that of me, but I'm not interested in doing the work or I don't want to go there.
Yeah, and it will happen.
Yes.
It will happen. Like you get some people that are like, that's all great and good, but I don't want that. And it's fine. It's fine. You start learning.
Go at that point? Because I'm not good at that part.
No. See, as I think I'm getting better at it. Before I used to be like, what? No, never. And then at some point it's like, no. At the end of the day, if they're not willing, then it's not going to work. But it's hard though. It's like, because you're very invested. Yes. And especially when you're working with younger people, because then you're so invested and you think, no, man, you can do it. And then at some point it's like, no, maybe it's not that they can't do it. It's like, maybe they don't want it. And you start knowing your kind of people. You start knowing your kind of people. It's interesting. I've known Mike Davis for a decade now, and I've seen him work. And I always say, now I was telling him that I know his kind of people because you can see it. You can see it. It's like, and they start, and I think the beauty of doing it for a long time, you start knowing, and you start knowing, we'll not get along, or this is not going to work, and you just leave it. But you also know who your kind of people are.
Who are your kind of people? What qualities do they have?
They want more from life. They want a lot from life. Secondly, they have a vision that is bigger than themselves. They want their life to count. That's two. And then also, they know how to live with people. I think one of the things that I don't like is people who are willing to they're ambitious, but they're willing to stumble on anyone who's on their way to get ahead. So for me, I love people who are moving in that direction. I tend to see entrepreneurs or people who are, who are almost like obsessed about something, right? It's like you meet someone and they're just obsessed about something, and this is this one thing. And looking from the outside in, you're like, you're weird. It's like that, but they're obsessed about something.
Like that intensity.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that those kind of people, and then people who don't see limits. I think, and maybe that's because you are in a place where for us, there's not enough resources, and I always think at some point, maybe the resources will come. And then I get to a point, it's like, they're not going to come. You will never have enough. You will never have enough. Now it's about how do you make it work?
Wow.
And people who take initiatives from me are that. But people sort of like let life happen. It's like, come on, guys.
Yeah. We have a short time frame
Exactly,
here that we're working
exactly,
on.
exactly.
We don't know how short it is. So.
Yeah, it's like, come on, let's move. Yeah, let's move.
That is amazing.
This conversation was just too good for one episode. So join us next week for part 2.